Good morning. What a great time of worship. Oh man, that song. Woo! Thanks for being here. I'm Chris. If we haven't met, one of the pastors here at Christ Church. We're just so honored. Everybody's here with us this morning. And just a few quick things. If you are new, or really you have any question at all, we would love to connect to help you with that. In person, you can go out to the tent that you'll see right outside the doors. It's teal to your left, and it's just a place to get some information. You got a free gift if you are new, and you can text the word new if that's easier for you, and we'll start a conversation that way. Also, open up our app. Let us know you're here, and hit the refresh button. There's a new button at the bottom I want to tell you a little bit more about later in our time, but we're just really excited you're here. I wanted to say welcome. Thank you so much. And then next week, we are starting a new series. It's our fall kickoff. And so many of us, our lives revolve around the school year with the university, with our kids, grandkids, whoever it might be. And so we're getting some things kicked off next week. And this is a perfect time for you and I to invite our one. To invite that person either is like not connected to God, not connected to his family. Or on our topic, we're going to be talking about our relationships. And we're not just talking about like traditional family relationships, we're talking about all the different places where we find ourselves interacting with other people. And how do we find hope in just this time of tension in life in those most important places? That's what I'm going to be teaching on, what Stephen Grauman, who's on our team, is going to be teaching on. We're just really excited to share some very practical things. So these are very easy times to bring a friend. And then we're going to do a big kickoff next week. We're going to have food. We're going to have the bounce houses. We got the ice cream truck coming. It's going to be face painting. Bring the kids. You see some kids in your neighborhood this week, bring them. And we have cards. You can invite your friend, your one. And again, I just always want to acknowledge those who are giving to our church in small ways and in very generous ways. Just thank you so much for everyone who's a part of that. When you give, you're doing great deeds. And I'm going to share some of those with you as we go along this morning. If you want to open your Bible, we're going to start in Matthew 22. Let me ask you a question, though. You're at church, so you have to be honest, okay? You guys ready? Who has seen the Barbie movie? Anybody? Like, you're raising your hand that you saw the Barbie movie. Good job, Micah. Yeah, all of you. Way to be honest. I have not seen the Barbie movie. That was just me showing you how to raise your hand. It was not me saying I've been. I'm not against it. I just haven't been. But here's the thing. I started listening to kind of the conversation around this movie. And then I listened to Billie Eilish, who's a recording artist. You may know her, you may not. She did a song for the soundtrack of the Barbie movie entitled, "What Was I Made For?" And I was listening to this song, and I watched the video on YouTube the other day. And then I listened to an interview Billie Eilish did on her like writing the song and like how it came about and the story behind it. And she said, I wanted to write from the perspective, if Barbie could ask a question, what would be her question? And it would be, why am I here? Somebody made me. I didn't get here on accident. Why did they make me? And I realized, and she actually talks about this in the interview I watched, this is the question we ask, isn't it? At some point in your life, you and I, we all wrestle with, why am I here? What is my purpose? What is our purpose as people? And I am assuming, and I'm coming from the position that we were made. If that's not your position, you probably ask the same question, honestly, but just from a different perspective. And we're told all kinds of things, right? Like our culture gives us all the answers, doesn't it? Why are we here? What's the point? Well, it's to be successful, right? Or it's to be happy. I hear that a lot. It's to achieve some notoriety, to be famous, to find and claim an identity. I'm not just talking about gender, sexual identity, though that is up to be claimed and decided, isn't it? But so is being an independent, self-made man. That's just a different identity we try to achieve. A strong woman, all kinds of things. Some of us think the answer to the question, why am I here, is to be a parent, and to raise kids. And then they all move out of my house, and it's awesome. So, but that's not my purpose, is it? To be a wife, to be a husband, to be a professor, to be an engineer, to become the leader of a team, to move up the ranks, to gather experiences and find pleasure is sometimes the answer, isn't it? Or to just do all the right things. Some of us think the purpose of life is just be good, do your duty, meet the obligations. But they don't answer the question very well, do they? These options for identities, do you find that to be satisfying? So I want to help us with that answer. What was I made for? And I think Jesus provides a pretty good answer, probably in several places. I said Matthew 22 is where we're going to start. Here he gets asked a question. And I want to maybe just give you a little bit of my thought progression of this. What are you and I made for? Because Jesus is asked the question by some religious leaders. Well, you can see it right here. Teacher, what is the greatest commandment of the law? And here's how I see this connecting to the question of our purpose, our existence. The point of the law, that's this Old Testament part of our Bible. The first 5 books of your Old Testament are the law. And then the rest of it are the prophets and different writings. And they're all about how you and I are to interact with the Creator, with the God who made us. And so I think when Jesus answers the question of take all of the how we're supposed to exist, it gives an answer to the why we exist. This is his answer. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these 2 commandments. So in typical Jesus fashion, he gets asked a question, what's the number one thing? And he gives 2 answers. He says, it's this. This is why we exist. Because when he's answering from the how, he's synthesizing the how, it's implicit that that's the why. Here's how I would say it. We were made to follow Jesus. That's why we're here. It's to interact with him. And we're told, and Jesus is asked in these same conversations, the same new way of looking at the world and looking at God, who's my neighbor then? We get the love God part. Well, then who's my neighbor? Who do I have to be nice to? Right, we're always looking for that, aren't we? Jesus' answer's pretty easy to find. He just defined neighbors as everybody. We've been talking for the last 3 weeks, if you've been with us, about our work amongst the Sahrawi refugees and this global impact God's called us to have, because our neighbors are everyone in this world. You're made to follow Jesus. I'm made to follow Jesus, but we're not made to do that alone. And so, just the way the logic works for me is if I'm made to follow Jesus, and you're made to follow Jesus, and what a church is just a collection of people, then our collective purpose is just to help one another do that. And that's why we say that our church, our mission, is to help one another follow Jesus. It's because we're made to follow him. So it has to be our purpose. And it's so important for me today that you and I, we don't just mentally agree that. You go, great, that's fine. That's the church's mission. Awesome. I'm not looking for cognitive agreement today. I want to talk about how you and I can engage in this mission. And many of you are. I am, and our family, and your families. But some of us just we're not fully engaged. And even those of us are, could we be just a little bit more engaged in the things God has for us? Because what we also have to acknowledge is that when Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, he knew some of, when we talk about neighbors and loving others, that there would be some other people who are like-minded following him, and that many wouldn't be. We're still to love them. And so as Jesus is teaching this new kingdom, it's not super popular. It's not very well embraced by some of the old guard, so to speak. And Luke 15 is a passage we talk about often here. And sometimes I skip the intro sentence. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. He's super popular with the wrong crowd. That's what's going on. Right? Because the right crowd, the Pharisees, teacher, the well-respected leaders of the religious community, muttered. Just say muttered. It's a word that requires saying, right? You know what muttered means? Muttered. They're complaining. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Sometimes, I hate to break, spoiler alert, people still mutter today. Maybe you've noticed. I've noticed. Maybe your friends mutter about your church. I hear some of that. Here's who's not muttering about our church. The people who are finding Jesus here. They're not complaining. You know who else isn't? Or the people in our community, people who lead nonprofit organizations that we serve and support, people in our city who are trying to make a difference in whatever way they are. They're actually not complaining about how we do church. But sometimes I hear it from very similar voices as this. So I say, let's let the religious folks, if your Christian friends that go to other churches mutter about your church choice, just let them. It's really not the point, because Jesus answers the muttering. I mean, this is something we talk about often together. And Jesus tells them a story. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country to go after the lost sheep until he finds it? This is what we talk about. Someone who's disconnected from God, from his family. There are one sheep. They're Jesus' one. He says the shepherd goes and finds it. And when he finds it, he kicks it in the tail and tells it all the bad things it did. No, that's what I think it says. When I'm in this situation, he puts it on his shoulders. He's full of joy. And he goes back and he gets his friends and throws a party. I have found my lost sheep. Jesus tells another story about coins, tells a story about the prodigal son. This is his answer to the muttering. When you hear the story of a lost sheep, maybe it's the first time, maybe you've heard it a lot. What do you think about? What sort of emotions do you start to notice when you hear this story? What goes through your mind? What goes through your mind when you see this image? We're just going to look at this together for a moment. Don't go too fast. I don't have a new point yet. Just look at this. What do you see? That sheep is really muddy. Like it almost looked like it could be stuck. I can relate to that sheep. I find myself in days and moments stuck in my own mess, my own sin. And sin isolates us, it removes us from our relationships, from God, from our families, from our church, and we get stuck alone. And the shepherd is running after that sheep. What do you see? Pay attention to what God's putting on your heart in this image. Because you and I live in a time, we live in a place that really just affords us the opportunity to decide what we want to do with our life. We get to decide our purpose, our identity, all those things I talked about earlier. It's up to me. It's up to you, right? Who am I to tell you how to live? Who are you to tell me? That's kind of what we think about, isn't it? Let me just be really clear. The shepherd who saves you doesn't give you that option. He doesn't give me the option to decide. Once I accept this rescue, he decides who I am, what my life is to be about. And here's the thing I've come to find, and many of you have come to find, he's better at picking what my life should be about than I am. Because he finds us and he puts us lovingly on his shoulders with all of our mud and mess. Takes us to a party where we're the guest of honor. Here's the thing, friends. He has a part for you to play in his kingdom. That's part of your identity that he gives you. It's the only identity that's given. The rest we have to earn. He gives. We're to love God, to love our neighbors, to go and make disciples. That's what we talked about the last 3 weeks. One at a time. Loving God, loving our neighbors, going to make disciples. This is what our church has, from its very inception, 39 years ago. We took the compassion of Luke 15, the great compassion, the great commandment we see in Matthew 22, this eyewitness account in the biography of Jesus. Love God, love your neighbor. And the Great Commission that for the last 3 weeks we've been teaching, and we put those together and we just say, we're here, you're here, I'm here to help each other follow Jesus. That's what we're about. You got a card, hopefully, when you came in. It's got a bunch of information, and all this simply is, I just wanted us to have an idea and to remember that what our church is about, what we spend our times and our strategies and efforts are to help you and I follow Jesus. There's 3 habits, this graphic, you see this picture. If you're a part of our church, you see this often, or at least I hope you realize you see it often. It's because we know that if you and I are involved in relationships that change our lives, you're in a relationship. Does it make you better or not? Does it help you follow Jesus, your relationships, your circle, or does it? There's no neutral. Are you selfless? Is your money, your time, your heart, your attention available to Jesus' kingdom? Or is it just yours? In worship, powerful worship experiences together, like we were doing this morning in our life groups and in our own time with our Creator. These 3 things, I just want you to consider this fall as we get into a new season. How do I engage with these just a little bit more than I am today? You're going to have to make time, because there's no magic bucket of extra time sitting at your house, is there? Not at mine. It's not just going to happen. You're going to go, well, when I find the time. No, friends. We don't find time. We make time for the things that are important to us, and these things will change us. They will. So what if you were just a bit more engaged with these? Because our church, what we see over and over again, is that when we do engage in these 3 habits, it changes our lives. I sent a message to a couple, husband and wife, and they have 2 kids. They're part of our church, to David and Erica, and I said, hey, the last couple of years, you guys have been serving more. What impact is that having? And if they gave me longer to preach, I would read their emails. David, I loved, because he said, I put your question in ChatGPT, and this is the answer. The internet gave me, the brain of the world. And then he gave me his answer. One of the things he said was that serving, being more selfless in their lives and their time, has helped him in this. His words were this kind of midlife crisis he'd found himself in. wondering what his purpose was, wondering what really was the point in some ways. And his wife's response and just the beauty of what God's doing in their lives through serving. Their kids, their daughter went to camp this summer for the first time. They're just seeing what we know to be true. When you and I put ourselves in the places where God can change us, we can help one another follow him, he changes us for the better. You see on this paper this principle, this statement that is true. This is just a value statement of who we are, friends, as a church. God's love is compelling us to take big risk. And for David, starting to serve was a big risk. And I'm going to ask you to do the same. You can see on here the other things that God has put in front of us. They're so big. They would be so impactful. It's who he's called us to be. It's who we are. So you can see our goals and things going on in the community. And there's so many places of like David and Erica's family and your family, my kids and our grandkids. And just we're seeing lives changed. And it's so amazing. There's just so many great things that are happening. How are we doing? When you look at our mission and our goals, what's the current status of some of these? I just want to share a few updates. One, you see over here, number 3, that we have this goal to develop all of our physical property. We have a lot of acreage that's it's not used. We're growing some gophers in parts of it. And we're just, if you pay any attention to how our city government officials do planning and like new buildings, it's slow. And if you work there, let's get together and pray, right? Like if that's your department. And they've just been honestly kind of conflicting in their advice to us. Or do we need to do some variance requests? Do we need to do a rezoning? It's that kind of stuff we're trying to figure out right now. And we are figuring it out. We're making progress. But here's the thing that's so exciting. Everybody that knows about our plans as we go, hey, we're thinking about this or maybe that, they're just so excited about what you're doing in this community. Who our church is well known as people who are helping Northern Arizona. They see the benefit. They're just not in a hurry. And that's okay. We did a special offering these last 3 weeks. That's another thing that's super exciting to me, to expand our English school in the Al-Sird refugee camp in southwest Algeria. And we wanted to raise $10,000 because we had a $10,000 match. And you guys gave, and our family gave $20,000 collectively. That's awesome. Yeah, that's double the goal. So we have $30,000 to expand that school, and now they're going to have all the desks and books and everything they need. One of the challenging areas has just been, honestly, our Sunday engagement. The number of people or adults who are engaged in life groups is less. Our church engagement for our adult population, which is us, like most of us are adults, right, is about 28% less right now than it was in 2019 before the pandemic. But our investment in students at the corner, in college ministry, our engagement in global missions, helping you and I connect with our ones, the resources and the tools needed for that, we've never invested more in those things. But we are, just honestly, a smaller church than we were just a couple years ago. And on a regular incoming basis of our tithes and your tithes and my tithes and offerings is less than it was then, because there's just fewer people to give. And what happened during the pandemic, and this happened everywhere, not just for us as a church, is the government gave money to employers to incentivize us to keep our employees. So we received those funds, 2 different programs, PPP, ERTC, and we've been using those funds. For the last 3 years, we've stretched them out because of our team's incredible stewardship. And we kept our full-time equivalent staff at 16, very close to where it was pre-pandemic. But we just can't continue to do that. It's an area that's been challenging. And as we get resources and talk to experts in leading a healthy church like you would in your industry, at your work, or your business, we know that the standard is that if our staffing costs go much above 50% of our regular tithes and offerings that come in each month, we're going to be out of balance. There's going to be things we want to do we're not going to be able to do. And because of these additional funds, we've been running in the 60 to 65% that our staffing cost is of our giving. And that's just not sustainable because those extra funds have been used. And so to keep our staff the same size would have required so many reductions to other things that just wasn't agreeable to our elders, to our leadership. So over the summer, we've reduced our staff from 16 FTE to 11. And it's been really challenging. A couple of those people made that decision of their own, and some of them didn't. It was just an emotional time for everyone who was involved in this. And I just want to ask you to be praying for our church, for those people whose jobs and situations have changed. Some of them are still here. I think some of them are going to be moving. And let me just be really as clear as I can in this. This doesn't mean we're broke. There's actually not a financial crisis that we're facing as a church together. That's not what this situation is. And I just want to answer what I'm already hearing is like, well, what about this and what about that? See, we had to make these decisions now before we get to a financial crisis. Our financial policies and things we can talk about, they're not private, and they're very robust in savings and emergency funds. And we're still going to ask from time to time, like we just did, to contribute above our giving regularly to help with special projects. And people have even asked, well, why didn't you tell us you needed more money for the general budget? We would have contributed to that. Well, I'll be really honest, I have several times. And those of you who give, like our family gives on a regular basis, is so important and vital to what God's calling us to do. Thank you. But maybe this helps is if I explain it this way, because I'm already getting these questions, and they're fair questions, and I answer whatever I can. I don't mind it at all. Is why do we just raise $30,000 to send to a project halfway around the world when could we have used that money to keep our staff, to keep our friends, people we love on the team? Well, the move from 16 employees to 11 is going to save us $20,000 a month. So if we had done this fundraiser and raised the exact same funds, $30,000, we would have had 6 more weeks. And so it's just hard to think about it this way, right? Because we're at church and you're like, I just want coffee and cookies, man. Like a little Jesus would be great too. I know, but we have to do that. We have to think of it this way. Because you're going to get here next week and you're going to see an ice cream truck and a face painter and a balloon twisting person. Because if we spend some money to help our ones find Jesus, that's a good decision. And we're responsible. We do things that seem reasonable for those of us asked to make these decisions. And you're going to go, well, what? We just had to get in front of this. And as we move forward with fewer paid leaders, it doesn't mean we're moving forward slower. It doesn't mean we're moving forward with a need for fewer leaders. We just have fewer who can be paid, which means you and I have to contribute to helping one another follow Jesus in our gifts, using our talents in leadership. There's just some places that today we have the most need. And I want to share with you a couple of them. And students is the first one, as you see. And this is going to, if you look at that paper, remember, we're people who take big risk. And when I say students, you go, whoa. Like, yeah, middle schoolers. Like the easiest people to hang out with are 7th graders, right? We need your help. And we actually need it in a couple ways that are quite, I think, reasonable, and you don't have to have a lot of expertise, is on Sunday nights, our high school ministry is moving from Monday to Sunday. That starts tonight. And we feed those kids. And we need volunteers to prepare the food and serve the food. The same thing happens over at campus at the corner. It starts in a couple weeks when NAU is back in session. And there's groups of people who go prepare or buy and serve food for each of those students. And because here's the thing, I've met college students. And I'm like, how did you join this ministry? They go, I was broke. My friend said there was free food. I came. And then I joined a small group, and I got baptized, and I gave my life to Jesus because somebody showed up with some tacos. God gets to do that kind of stuff. And we just need your help. The menus are there. We're not in a financial crisis. We pay for the food. We're not even asking you to pay for it. There's volunteers who do this. Tim and Susie lead this for the corner. They're going to tell you about they're at the New Here tent. They have some brochures for either group, high school or college. And there's some people who I think are super saints. They serve at both. Because you don't have to do it every week. It's planned out. It's super easy. And we also need help with middle schoolers, 11:30. Next service, we'll have 40 to 50 middle schoolers. Don't let that scare you too much. It should cause healthy fear. But guys, middle school is the most critical age we face right now. It just is. And we just need more healthy people to invest in the lives of our kids. So we need help with students. We need help on Sundays. We want this to be the friendliest place in northern Arizona. And we've got a long ways to go. We're not even close to Chick-fil-A friendly yet. But we want to be because we have something better. We have the thing that every one of our friends needs, don't we? So whether it's with kids or making people feel welcome or just be an unofficial row host. You're like, I'm introverted. I know, so are the people next to you. Be an introvert with the introverts together. Be friendly. We need your help in making things better on Sundays. Because look at this, these habits. Your involvement in worship is impactful. And we've made this in our season of I'll be at church when there's nothing else going on. And I'm not too tired from the chili cook-off I was at yesterday. Or whatever, right? And I know you're here. And I know there's many of you in this room who served last service or are going to serve next service. And I just want to say thank you. And my hope is that the rest of us will start helping you. Help our kids, help our newcomers. Live selflessly, because friends, what God is calling you and I to do, it requires that all of us are here every single Sunday, almost every single Sunday, and that we serve an hour and we worship an hour. Because David and Erica's story would be more of our stories. Because those of us who do that, we have those same stories that they have. It is impactful. It helps you follow Jesus. Being at church when it's only convenient, it's just not enough anymore. And here's what I don't need. And I'm going to maybe step on your toes, and I actually intend to. There's a lot of people who are on a volunteer list at our church who don't show up. I don't need any more people on the list. We have all the kids workers we need on the list. We just need you to show up. Twice a month, 3 times a month, 4 times a month, so the kids that come get to interact with you. You get to show them Jesus, and they're going to show you just as much, trust me. Friends, it's just time. So if you want information, you can text serve to the number there. You can go on our app in the bottom, banner, whatever it's called, the frame, it says serve. You got to refresh your app. If that's not there, you'll see it. and you get similar questions and like, what areas do you want to know more about? Here's a lifetime contract. No, that's not what happens. But it's time. This is the time to live more selflessly, my friends. And then the last thing we need your help with is invite your one. This is what we do. We take what God's given us, or even just the thing we're wrestling with, and we invite someone else into it with us. And Jesus is the shepherd who saves them, and he uses us to find one person at a time. So next week, this is why we're doing all this effort, and why even as I share these other things, we're spending some of our resources to make next Sunday an easy opportunity for you to invite your one, for me to talk to my neighbor down the street who has 2 young boys, because they're just going to be more likely to come if there's some enticement for his kids. We don't do this all the time. We got cards. You can invite someone. These sermons are going to be for all of us. Easy for everyone to understand and implement. We're also going to, I didn't mention it earlier, I meant to, on the 13th at 5:30, we're going to do a worship night. It's going to be in conjunction with our high schoolers. So if you want help worshiping well, join them. They're awesome. And so are you. And we're going to together just spend time in prayer and worship for about an hour to kick off our fall. I hope you'll be able to make it. You and I were made to follow Jesus. It's what he says over and over again. It's why you are here. It's why our church exists, is to help each other. It's why we offer all the things we offer. It's to help us in our pursuit of Jesus. And here's the thing I want you to at least hear, even if you don't agree with it. Your yes to more engagement in that will have impact. And so will your no. And here's what I've seen in my life, and I've watched in many others' lives. The impact of my yes, the impact of my no's is greatest on the people I care the most about. For me, it's my wife and my kids. And when I step into more of what God has for me, and I help them and I help others follow Jesus more, it impacts the people I care about the most. And when I've shrunk away from it and I've said no, that impacts them too. Your yes will have an impact. So will your no. Because you were made for a purpose, to fulfill God's mission. The question really is just, will you embrace that a little bit more this fall than you are now? I hope you will. And I want to pray for us. I want to pray for our church. So would you stand? We're going to end our time praying together. And after we're done, if you want to meet with our prayer team, you have any needs or concerns or just issues they would love to pray with you, when we're finished praying together, join me if you would in this prayer. God, thank you. For when we are in the mud and we're separated from you, we've been lost, you come find us. God, there are dozens of that story in this room, and you keep finding us. And we're just incredibly grateful. And God, I pray that in this season, you would use us to find more of your lost sheep. Use us, God, to introduce our one, the person you keep putting on our heart over and over again, to you. And God, I pray for our church, for our just this season of change and the emotions of it, God, and I just pray we would see an incredible move of selfless living this fall, of people giving their time to your kids for your sake. Jesus, we pray all these things in your name. And everybody said, amen. Thanks so much for being here. Let's just go help one another follow Jesus.